and welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Kelley Shannon, Executive Director of the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas since 2013, overseeing freedom of information advocacy, educational seminars and conferences, and other outreach. Ms. Shannon, it's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited to speak with you. This is one of my favorite topics that I'm most passionate about that I don't get an opportunity to speak about often enough. So it's really great to have you here to talk about freedom of information, transparency, PIRs, all that stuff. But you're the executive director of the Freedom of Information Foundation. How did you get into that role? I believe you founded it, correct?
No, I did not. It was founded in 1978.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Actually. So I was still in high school then. It was founded in Dallas, and it started as media groups forming it.
Yeah.
However, they quickly realized it needed to be for the entire public. It wasn't just a media issue. So it was founded in Dallas, operated there for many, many years. It's a nonprofit, 501c3. And in 2009, I believe it was, they moved to Austin because realizing this is where so much of the action is about open government laws and it being the capital, et cetera. So I got into the role because just many years I was a news reporter. I worked for Associated Press. I worked for the Dallas Morning News, a couple of other outlets. And in my reporting, I would use public information laws, Open Meetings Act, and I'd get more and more familiar with it. And I wasn't just somebody who used those laws in my reporting, but I kind of became a real nerd about it and would even write about those laws. So whenever this job opened up, it just seemed like a real natural fit. And so I moved into this role. Well,
so I guess, broad overview, what does the Freedom of Information Foundation do exactly? I mean, I can guess by the name of it that it just advocates for more transparency.
Absolutely. We're all about government transparency and also protecting free speech rights.
Yep.
And in our view, those things go hand in hand because if you want to speak out about your government or advocate and hold your government accountable, you've got to have that information. If you don't have the information that you need, then you're really, your hands are tied behind your back as far as speaking out to your government and holding it accountable. So government transparency, the open government laws we promote, we try to strengthen those, try to educate the public about them. And then at the same time, we're all about free speech and free press rights too.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see if someone wanted to, I don't know, if they're petitioning their government or what, speaking out about something, they got to have all the information to, make a good case.
Absolutely.
In many cases. I mean, in some cases there's, higher level philosophical whatever that you could speak about, but knowing the nitty gritty of what's going on and why in your name with your money, I feel like you got to know what's going on.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there with your money. I mean, that's what brings so many into this umbrella because, you want to know how the money's being spent, how programs are being developed, how decisions are being made, why they're being made. And if you don't have that information, you really cannot totally advocate for what you want with your government.
Absolutely. So I think at the end of September, you'll have the Freedom of Information Foundation Conference. How did that go?
Oh, it was great. Top attendance, tied for our largest ever attendance. Let's just say business is booming in the open government world right now.
Is that a good thing? I mean, it's good for y'all.
It's good for us because we are trying to make more people aware of this.
Yeah.
But I just think there's a real heightened interest in it right now for various reasons. But for instance, at our conference, we had an open government panel about transparency surrounding the Hill Country floods. We even had one parent who had lost a daughter in the Camp Mystic tragedy. We had reporters who covered it who have been asking questions ever since. We talked about, kind of what should have been more transparent before the flood and after the flood. So there was a lot of interest in that. We also did talk about what happened in the recent legislative session. We talked about best practices for using the Public Information Act. And then we had some real compelling speakers at our luncheon. So it was just a really great day.
Yeah, I would think, I think when people think of the freedom of information and PIRs and stuff like that, public information requests, they're thinking about, I don't know, what maybe some scandal or I don't know. It doesn't seem like this tragedy would be something that would be prime for hiding information necessarily, right? It seems like just a tragedy that happened, and that's sad. And that I would think that people would hope that there would just be transparency about it. Like, this is from the government's point of view, right? These were private camps. It was a tragedy, whatever, right? But it's not I don't know, some sort of scandalous misuse of taxpayer money or something. Right.
It wasn't something thought out and planned and a scandal in that sense.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not a scandal. But that just goes to show how government transparency transcends a whole lot of different topics, right?
Yeah.
So it may well be a natural disaster and something that happened. And then questions are asked afterwards about how could this happen? What could be done to prevent in the future?
Of course.
Even like flooding in Houston during a tropical storm, or, there's floodplain maps people want to see. All of this goes into the whole umbrella of government transparency, open government. You want to be able to ask for records that help you learn what happened and how things can be done better in the future.
Yeah. So I guess my question is that stuff been hard to acquire? Has there been hurdles that have been sort of put up against maybe journalists or parents or, just private individuals trying to get those maps or trying to get that information about what happened?
I would defer to those families who are right
Sure.
at the center of it,
Okay.
and the reporters who've been covering it. But what we heard about at our conference were things like, just getting simple recordings about emergency alerts and the dispatcher recordings about who has the ability to call an alert and what the timing is and how urgent it is, and what the hierarchy was and were there enough people on duty, those kinds of things. And I don't think it's necessarily a large orchestrated effort
Sure.
to hide information. But when you have such a horrible event, there can be finger pointing, there can be worry about, did we do the right thing?
Yeah.
Is this going to make us look bad? So I don't think it's anything malicious. I just think it naturally is a situation where the public is asking questions and they need to be answered.
Yeah, of course. And so at the conference, Bill Aylshire, he's been on the show here. He won the James Madison Award, honoring his work on open government and First Amendment work. I think he said that without transparency, the government is a petri dish for corruption and a reason for people to doubt the legitimacy of their government. And I think that's an interesting point of view that maybe not a lot of people think about. And I know that he's done a lot of great work here in Austin. I follow his work here in Austin, getting Austin City Council to be more transparent about stuff. But if you could maybe, expand on that idea of, without the transparency, then government is more likely to be corrupt.
Yeah. So if government officials know, and they should know, that everything they do is out there for the public to see, and they should always think that way, and they should always remember it's our government, we the people, it belongs to us. You are public servants and you're serving the public. If they have that mindset, which many governments do, they know all of this information they have is there, available, it's going to be coming out, right? If they have any kind of idea that they can hide it or there isn't going to be that transparency, then, sometimes human nature with some people takes over and they realize, oh, I can do something to get by with that the public isn't going to know about or ask me about. So I think that's where Bill was going with that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So where does transparency stand today in Texas?
Okay, where it stands today, we have had our main two open government laws are the Texas Open Meetings Act and then the Texas Public Information Act. And you and I have been mostly talking about the Public Information Act. It's more intricate and involved. The Open Meetings Act's pretty straightforward, although most people have their interaction with government at meetings. So we get a lot of questions and calls about that. Both of those laws are strong, and the Public Information Act started in the early 70s, and it was known then as the Open Records Act. And it was written as a very, very strong law in response to the Sharpstown scandal of the early 70s. If any listeners out there don't know about it, go look it up, and we have some information on our website. Sharpstown.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a stock fraud issue that went on involving lawmakers, and we have background on our website. People can look it up. They can Google it.
Sure.
When I was in college, they even taught us a chapter on it in our Texas government class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was early 80s, though, so it was still very fresh.
Sure.
Don't think they do now, because I speak to a lot of classes and ask how many have heard about it, and
I must admit, I've never heard about it, so I have some homework to do.
Yeah, but of a certain age, you're probably not going to know as much about it. Right?
Sure, yeah. So it started in the law started in the 70s in response to that. It was a very strong law.
Very strong law, and one reason, and it still is, the structure of it is very, very strong, and the reason being, it gives the power to the individual, the citizen requester, in the big scheme of things. Not to the government. In some states, governments can just deny an information requester, and then that person has to then go up and appeal and go to, whether it's the Attorney General's office or whatever their structure is. Sure. And it's all up to the individual to do it. The burden is on the citizen's back. That's time consuming, and
sounds criminal.
And in our state, the burden is on the government. Yeah. Everything is presumed open. If the government wants to withhold it, if that government entity thinks it falls under one of those legal exceptions, then in most cases, there's a few exceptions to that, but in most cases, they have to go to the Attorney General's office for a ruling on that. And so that gives us sort of like an umpire calling balls and strikes and saying, hey, you have to release this, or no, you're right, that falls under one of the legal exceptions. But you see how the burden is on the government, not on the individual. You, the individual, can request information, and then you can just sit back and wait, and you don't have to go through all those hoops and all of the appeals and appellate process, right? You can offer your own comments when the government appeals, but the burden is not on you. So as our law is written, it's very much geared towards the rights of the individual citizen requesters.
I feel like there's a but coming.
Well, you're right, but I will say that's but that structure remains.
Yes.
Okay, and so in that sense, we are still one of the strongest open government laws in the nation. But, and here's your but, is they, meaning the legislature, has done some whittling away of the law through the years and put in a lot more exceptions and put more information off limits. So it weakens the law. Not the overall structure of it, but it does weaken some of the details of it. Then groups like ours, Freedom of Information Foundation, and we're part of the Texas Sunshine Coalition, 16 different groups that are varied. We're all about open government. We work all the time to promote and protect and strengthen that Public Information Act.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing struggle of, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. So we're trying to keep it maintained strong and even strengthened, and that's what we're up to.
Yeah. So, so the structure that being assumed public information from the beginning, and it's on the government to deny it. It's just presumed that this is public information. That's a great structure, but you described that over the years it's been sort of whittled away. Without going into a whole lot of detail, just for sake of time, what is why would they do that? Well, what's the...
That would be a good question to ask our state leaders the next time they're on your show.
I will. I guess maybe something you could answer would be, what's the general reason? If someone, is it, I don't know. That just seems so backwards. As a private citizen, yes, I do a podcast, but I don't necessarily consider myself a journalist. But I have experience of filing public information requests with the city of Austin, and it can be frustrating. Why?
I get your point that you're making, and I can't answer for them, and
sure,
we don't want to go into tons of detail. But what typically happens, is one government out there will have some sort of what they consider a bad situation, like some information gets out that they don't think ought to be out there, and they're all worked up about it. Then they go to their local legislator, and then that it starts taking on a life of its own and
Yeah.
the ball starts rolling. And sometimes we're able to spot these things right off the bat. Sometimes we spot them too late, or
Yeah.
they get hidden in other legislation. So it typically starts with somebody with a little bit of a bug, bee in their bonnet
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
Something to hide.
What's that?
Something to hide.
Well, something to hide, or maybe they've just had, I can think of one case where one very well-meaning government had a situation with a guy who was making like way too many requests, meaning he wasn't really, you don't know what his motive was, but
Sure.
let's just say the behavior was sending in bot requests all night long and
Yeah.
things like this that was really bothering that whole government system and threatening the shutdown of their computer system or
Yeah,
something, right?
sure.
So this leads to some legislation that the legislator, who was very well-meaning and just trying to solve that local problem, was writing a bill that we were like, wait a minute, we realize you think that would solve your local problem, but do you understand that as it goes statewide, this has so many unintended consequences?
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do, is point those things out. And what we do is then we work with the legislator, try to help them solve that unique problem,
Yeah.
but without it interfering with the overall function of the law. And that's what we did in that case.
Am I mistaken? Was that the 88th legislature?
No, I think it was even which one are you thinking of?
Well, I remember something like that happening. I think it was before the 89th, and I want to say it was the 88th. Maybe it was the 87th. I don't know. But I remember seeing a bill, because I try to pay attention to this stuff about, if you file too many public information requests or whatever, then right.
I know the one you're talking about from that one. I'm thinking one that was even previous to that,
Okay.
from East Texas. But I think the one that you're talking about, we worked with the legislator on that, and with the university system that was experiencing the problem.
Yeah.
And we sat down at the table and we're like, hey, we see your problem you're dealing with.
Yeah.
We understand how the law works and what citizens are after. Here's how we can maybe come up with a compromise that addresses your problem, but doesn't just basically shut down information for people all over the state. And
Yeah.
so that's a big part of what we do that doesn't ever really get trumpeted in our news releases and things. It's
Sure.
like we're kind of playing defense, and we're working with legislators and constituents behind the scenes
Yeah.
to say, hey, we're here sort of as this sounding board. We can tell you how we think this is going to play out in the real world. If you pass this, here's why we think it ought to be worded differently. And, we've generated enough respect through the years and good faith, fairness with people, that a lot of times they do want us to be in on coming up with the
Yeah.
solution. So that's a good thing.
So what were the biggest advancements in the 89th Texas legislature that you guys worked on?
Well, one of the main ones was this law that was passed. All the things that we put out there have bipartisan support.
Yeah.
And it had, different, a Republican and a Democrat sponsor in the two chambers. And it had to do, and you would think that this should go without saying, but a government should have to respond to a Public Information Act request. Okay. Well, first off,
they just have to respond, positive or negative. They have to respond.
they've got to respond, and that's the law. It's there for a reason. It's
Yeah.
not there to be ignored. Well, every now and then you'll have a government that just thumbs its nose at the law. So we always need more enforcement. That's
Yeah.
another matter I could get into. But what we also have are some situations where a government maybe doesn't have the records you're asking. Maybe you're asking for some records that don't even exist. You
Yeah.
think they exist, but they don't exist.
Sure.
Okay, if there's no responsive records, they've had the guidance that they just don't have to respond to that requester. This law makes it such that you do have to respond to the requester and say, I'm sorry, but those records just don't exist. And
Yeah.
then that requester knows, and they aren't just left in limbo. They're hanging, going, hey, my city government is just flat out ignoring me, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they've got a ruling previously from the Attorney General's office that those specific records can be withheld legally under one of the exceptions. And some governments were not responding in those cases because they were like, we've already gotten an AG ruling on
Yeah.
that. We don't have to respond. Now, under this law that was passed this year, in that case, you just simply tell the requester that has already been ruled on by the Attorney General that we don't have to respond. End
Yeah.
of story. Then once again, the requester knows the outcome and isn't there hanging in limbo, thinking that their government's ignoring them.
Yeah, it would if that happened to me, I would think that I don't know, if I did it at the city of Austin, I would think that they're just being malicious, right?
Yeah, or they're just ignoring you because they don't like you or something.
Which I think is also malicious as a citizen of Austin.
Absolutely. They're supposed to treat everybody fairly and the same.
Absolutely. So what's the overall dream here? I mean, I can imagine, the original law, like you said, started in the 70s where everything was on paper.
Right.
And I could even, what you go to the local town hall or whatever, city hall, you should have access to those records. Maybe there's someone there that, you don't actually go to the filing cabinet and just pull out, I don't know, whatever. Someone's there to help you, right?
Yeah.
But now everything is online. Emails are being sent all the time. Text messages are being sent all the time. And like I said earlier, it's being done in your name with your money. What's the overall dream for you or for the Freedom of Information Foundation?
Well, I mean, our overall goal is just as much free flow of information as possible. There's always going to be a few exceptions where information is going to be can be withheld. But we want everyone to have this unfettered access to their information. Government information is their information. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. In some places around the state, I hear from people who can't even get a copy of the proposed school board budget for the coming year. You would think that would be quite obvious public information, right?
I would hope.
It happens. Just very basic information sometimes. I mean, that ought to go online.
Yeah.
Information that everybody's going to want, put it online. As you say, we're in this electronic age. There's no excuse for not putting spreadsheets and documents and things that the public wants, put it online. So yeah, we want people to be able to get that information quickly, easily. That would accomplish a lot of it. But on the cases when it's not online, we want prompt response. We want enforcement mechanisms if a government is not responding properly or is delaying and denying the information. So let's say they're going up to the Attorney General's office needlessly. There's talk about how do you enforce the law such that governments don't abuse that Attorney General ruling system. There have been some good ideas that have come out about that. We don't want the Attorney General's office to be overloaded with needless requests from government. And that just puts their workload, it wastes our taxpayer money, puts their workload way up there. So, we want to streamline things. We don't want governments to be able to abuse the system. And a lot of governments, don't get me wrong, a lot of governments are very good actors out there. They understand they serve the public and it's the public's information.
Sure.
There are some that are bad actors, and that's who we're talking about here.
Yeah. I guess I am curious, and I always think about this because, each government and agency sort of has their own system or, office or whatever. Like City of Austin might operate slightly different from Houston or Dallas, or this agency operates differently from this agency. Is there in your experience, or maybe by just reputation, maybe you don't have personal experience with them, but is there a specific government entity or agency that does this especially well?
Well, yeah, I would say the Texas Comptroller's Office does things very well.
Interesting.
And they have, as you know, they deal with a ton of information, all kinds of financial information from all over the state. And they have a staff there that's a veteran staff with people with legal degrees that understand the Public Information Act very well. So we always kind of point to them as they're doing this right. And they also understand if you're looking for certain data and it's contained in spreadsheet form, they understand, give out that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And you even give the record layout so people can understand that spreadsheet. And that gets into, technological stuff that,
Sure.
Not everybody's into. But the Comptroller's Office does it well. I think part of it is because they just deal with so much information. They're this big resource, holding entity for so much information around the state. And they have staff that know exactly what they're doing, and they're not afraid to release information because they know that's their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we're sort of describing sort of what the dream is. Everything's done electronically now. Maybe it should be easier to access that stuff. What are the I don't know if I don't know how you feel about, it's electronic. It should be available right now electronically since it's electronic, unless there's an exception for whatever reason. Like that seems like something that technologically could be done and is also the most transparent. I don't know if that's necessarily feasible, attainable policy in the near term. So I'm curious, what do you think are attainable policies in the near term? Say, looking at the 90th Texas legislature, what can be done in the short term to make Texas and Texas governments, county, city, whatever, more transparent?
And you're talking beyond this idea of just putting things out there electronically online.
I mean, if that's attainable, then.
But that's something that's kind of hard because,
Sure.
like, you can pass certain
Yes.
laws that say certain state information has to be out there online, like through the comptroller's office. One thing that can be done to make things more transparent, I think, and we've worked on this for several sessions now, is really shore up the law when it comes to if somebody has to go to court to sue a government to pry loose the information they're trying to withhold, and then that citizen requester, the information requester, wins, there needs to be a more option for attorney's fees for that person because they've had to spend all this money on attorneys to fight for the information. What we've got going on right now is some governments will try to withhold information. Maybe they go to the Attorney General's office and it's ruled they have to release it.
Yeah.
And then they get sued, and then there's this whole court case that goes on, and the person seeking the information has to hire an attorney, and they have to do discovery, and it gets costly. Then
the discovery might actually be doing discovery for a Freedom of Information Act request lawsuit. Sounds ironic, but go on.
Yeah, well, there you go. But what we see are some governments waiting till, say, the eve of trial, or in the trial before there's a final judgment, and then go, oh, okay, well, never mind. We're going to drop it. Here you go. Here's your information.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't gone to that actual final judgment, the law ties the judge's hands on the awarding of the attorney's fees. Now, you can talk to an attorney like a Bill Elshire or somebody more about this.
Of course.
I'm not an attorney, but this is one reason we want that attorney's fee provision to be stronger because, people shouldn't have to go to court to seek their public information. On the rare cases they do, when they feel like, I've got to do this. I've got to put myself out there. It's time consuming. It's expensive. And then if they win and they receive the information, there needs to be it's really an enforcement mechanism to prevent a government from stalling like that and then just go, oh, okay, you're right. You can have it. It's public. You take it.
Sure.
That would be an enforcement mechanism. And we would really like to see that in the law. Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of your time here, but I did want to ask you, I think it was Lauren, you know how to pronounce her name better than I do. McGaughey of the Texas Newsroom. Just a quick snippet of something that she reported, that Texas Governor Greg Abbott doesn't want to reveal months of communications with Elon Musk or representatives from the tech moguls' companies, arguing in part that they are private in nature, not of public interest, and potentially embarrassing. As a human being, I can empathize with that. I wouldn't want my personal emails leaked out to the world. I can't think of something off the top of my head that would be terribly embarrassing, but who knows? People can find stuff, I'm sure. But, what do we do in that? What's the solution there? Because, if Governor Abbott, or it doesn't have to be, I'm not trying to pick on him specifically, it could be any elected official, if they're emailing somebody that seems like it's of public interest because they're a public official. Now, if it's potentially embarrassing, I don't know what you do. I guess, use your private email address. And if you're not talking about business or, public, you're not talking about government or public, anything of like, hey, what are you doing for dinner tomorrow night? Is that public interest? I don't know.
Well, okay, there's a couple different layers of this.
Sure.
First of all, if somebody's sending emails to the governor's office, or any other big, public office, right? Why would you be putting information in there that's private anyway? It's of public interest,
sure,
right? So they may be thinking it's private, but when you're dealing with public officials, it's almost always public. As you say, there might be an occasional, hey, you want to go to dinner Friday night or something like that. That's off
Yeah.
That's
hey,
not
happy
it.
birthday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or hey, we'd love to have you and your wife over for dinner Friday night at 7 or
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah.
That might be off limits. But in general, everything that's going into these offices is of public interest. Furthermore, it doesn't matter what device you're using. It's just if it's going to a public official, even if it's going to their private device.
Yeah.
And this law was shored up several years ago that we worked on. It's still public information. It goes by what the information is, not by what device it's on.
Yeah.
So, like if it goes to, say, a state official's private device, but it has to do with a big public case that somebody's dealing with, that's public information. But when you're talking about the intimate and embarrassing business, I think that is overused and misconstrued. And again, a lawyer could really get into like the case law on this. But in general, what we're thinking about in those cases is if it's really intimate information, like something in a police report about a rape or something, usually, or maybe there's a sex harassment case that, gets very graphic. Sometimes those are the things that we think of that are more the intimate and embarrassing details, even though, sometimes that information comes out too.
Of course.
So, it's very hard to think of what information they might be talking about. Haven't seen those emails that you're referring to, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But we don't want that to be overused or misconstrued.
Right. I mean, anything could be, say, not of public interest or potentially embarrassing. If I'm the governor and Elon Musk's emails me to say, hey, come over for dinner on Friday at 7:00, I might say that's not a public interest, but the public may say, well, what are you going to his house at 7:00 for? Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, there could be potential business going on, whatever. Kelley Shannon, I really appreciate you taking the time. But to wrap up here, do you want to share email address or social media?
Yeah. So our website is FOIFT.org, as in Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas.org, FOIFT.org. We're also on Twitter, and you can always reach me. My email address is on our website that I just shared. So we're open. Oh, and I should also add, we have the FOI hotline, and that is staffed by volunteer attorneys who will answer general questions about the Open Meetings Act, Public Information Act, Freedom of Information related queries. It's not for other areas of the law, but these are volunteers. They're not going to be they're attorneys, but they're not providing you specific legal advice, but they're answering general questions about how to use the Public Information Act and the Open Meetings Act, and they can talk about your specific situation with you too.
Yeah. Well, Kelley Shannon, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.